Welcome to The Feminist Romantic. I'm your host, Kara McKinnon. This week on The Feminist Romantic, I'm going to be discussing Princess Leia, PhD. At the end of the last episode, I said that my next topic was going to be series romances and following either one couple through a series or multiple couples in each book of a linked series. Unfortunately, this week I lost my voice and I'm still a little scratchy, so I apologize. And I wanted to, instead of taking on that topic, which is going to be a little lengthy, deal with something that would keep me talking for only maybe 20 minutes instead of half hour, 45 minutes. So, a little while ago, I had read an article that I linked on my Facebook page. It's an article from the Washington Post's Post Everything series. The author is Daniel Dresner, and the title is, "We Need to Talk About Princess Leia, PhD." I've posted the link in the show notes, so if you haven't read it already, you can find it there or over on my Facebook page, my Kara McKinnon Facebook page, I should say. And I am going to basically be reacting to that, so if you haven't read it, you should probably take the time now and click over to that and read it. It's really short, it won't take you that long. And then come on back and hear what I have to say about Dresner's article. Okay, you back? Well, for those of you who decided not to go read the article, here's a brief summary. Basically, Dresner's responding to a Twitter post by Becca Harrison, at Becca E. Harrison, who says, in response to a quote from the 2004 Star Wars commentary indicating that Leia had a PhD, "Can you imagine having everyone call you princess when you were actually Dr. Organa?" So this is what Harrison said was about, can you imagine having everyone call you princess? And Dresner responds to that, but instead of responding to what Harrison actually has to say, he more responds to just the fact that Leia had a PhD. He brings up some interesting points about how Leia's arc in the original Star Wars trilogy follows an expected path for a postdoc, since she's supposed to have recently finished her PhD in addition to being a senator at the beginning of Star Wars. He claims that her early brash, know-it-all attitude in Star Wars is typical of a new PhD, and that as the films progress, she becomes more jaded and finally gives up her original desires for academia in favor of new skills honed during the rebellion. So, that's the article, and it's interesting on its, merits, and I like looking at different interpretations of material, and as things go, okay, fine. But I feel like he's missing the point of what Harrison was trying to say in her Twitter comment. As improbable as it is for anyone to finish their dissertation by 19 and to hold elected galactic office at the same time, the point here is that Leia did it. She's incredibly accomplished. Yes, from a writing point of view, she's a wish fulfillment character for George Lucas. She's beautiful, strong, intelligent, powerful, etc. But I don't really have a problem with that because we need more of those in fiction, even if it's a little improbable at that age. So, what Becca Harrison mentioned, however, was not so much about looking at the series in terms of Leia having a PhD, but how that PhD was entirely erased from the text of the film. It's nowhere in any of the Star Wars anything that Leia has a PhD. I just went and tracked down all of the Star Wars stuff on the internet. I have not read the entire expanded universe, but I've read a good bit of it, even the ones that are now legends, and I can find nowhere that states canonically that she has a PhD, except here in this commentary. And I am absolutely sure that that was in George Lucas's original treatment, was that, she was this very accomplished teenager because he was trying to contrast her with Luke, who was a farm boy from nowhere. So why was that aspect of her character erased? It doesn't really make sense, and the idea of Leia not wanting to be seen just as a princess does come up in some of the expanded universe, a little bit in the original trilogy, and especially in The Force Awakens when she specifically asks to be called General. So, canonically, Leia is uncomfortable with her princessness, even before the destruction of Alderaan, but even more so after the destruction of Alderaan. And if you want to read an amazing book that deals with Leia's complicated relationship with the remnants of Alderaan, I would definitely highly recommend Razor's Edge by Martha Wells. It's been stripped of its canonical status post-Force Awakens, but I don't think it really goes that far outside of the canon. There was like one or two things in it that got retconned, so the whole book had to be retconned. But in general, Martha Wells writes my headcanon Leia. Her interpretation of Leia is the most accurate depiction of the princess / senator / doctor / general Leia Organa Solo that lives in my head. The Leia that I believe in is the Leia that exists in Razor's Edge. So if you haven't read it already, I highly recommend it. It's set in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and it's fantastic. So you should definitely read it if you're a Leia fan. And if you're not a Leia fan, you probably already stopped listening to this podcast. Anyway, getting back on topic. I feel Leia is absolutely the sort of person who wants to be recognized for her accomplishments and not an accident of birth, or in this case, adoption. So, although it's never mentioned anywhere in the canon that she has a PhD, it is absolutely mentioned that she's a senator. And in some of the expanded universe stories, there are canonically times where she rails against the media treating her as a princess, where she doesn't want to be a princess because princesses are just about duty and she wants to have accomplishments of her own. And she does things. She has humanitarian efforts. She works in the Senate trying to do good deeds, even though pretty much everyone there is just a mouthpiece for the Emperor. So she's very upset that her accomplishments on her own merit are subsumed by her title of princess. And yes, the senator part does go away in the middle of Star Wars when the Emperor dissolves the Senate. But canonically within Star Wars, the film and the original film trilogy, so not the expanded universe, Leia never insists on being called senator, much less being called Dr. Organa. And that is problematic for me, because if Lucas intended her to be accomplished and intended her to be someone who is cosmopolitan, as well as, yes, snarky and argumentative, why wouldn't he write that into her character? And this is a writing problem. This is probably a George Lucas problem, but it sort of bugs me looking back that even though she was allowed to be snarky and stand up for herself in a lot of ways, that some of her greatest accomplishments, being a senator, being a PhD, aren't even lauded in the text. So I have to agree with Becca Harrison that it would be very annoying for Leia to be Dr. Organa and have everyone constantly refer to her as princess, especially Han. But he knows that, which is why he does it. So for him, at least, he's trying to annoy her and not just being a dick. Well, he's kind of being a dick, but he knows he's being a dick. Excuse me. So he's needling her on purpose and not just doing it subconsciously, which would be much, much worse. You could also argue, I guess, that this is an issue of correct address. Although I did go to Debrett's because, what are you going to look for correct address if not Debrett's? And yeah, it would be correct to refer to her as Her Royal Highness and, Princess Leia Organa, etc. Even if she was a senator and even if she was a PhD. But putting aside all of that, because she is actually referred to as Senator Organa within the context of Star Wars. So I suppose maybe the galactic title overrides her local system title. But putting aside all of that, and whether she should be addressed as whatever, her choice is important here too. Because in Force Awakens, she chooses to be called General. She chooses to take that on. And putting aside all issues of etiquette, that doesn't excuse Lucas or any of the other writers from excluding her PhD from the text. So that's obviously what bothered Becca Harrison, and that's what bothers me. Sure, it's implausible, but this is a space opera. There's magic and mysticism, midi-chlorians aside, but don't get me started on that. I can suspend my disbelief in a space opera where there's a magical force controlling everything, that a girl who grew up as a princess and had a very specific role in her life was able to perhaps focus entirely on her academic career as a younger girl and could get her PhD at 19, at which point she then goes out and gets a political career and becomes a senator. I'll believe it. I'll go there. So, although Dresner's article is an interesting thought experiment, it doesn't erase the real criticism that Star Wars, at least in the original trilogy, undercuts Leia as a character, especially by the time we get to Return of the Jedi. Now, let me be clear here. I don't think falling in love with Han is a bad thing. After all, this is the feminist romantic. Falling in love is one of my favorite things in fiction, or in real life too, especially when it's such a mismatch as Han and Leia. So they are one of my top 10, top 5 couples in all of fiction. So I definitely don't think it's a bad thing that she falls in love with Han, or the subsequent things that happen to them up through The Force Awakens. Falling in love is not bad, and neither is it bad for her to devote a considerable amount of time and resources to rescuing Han from Jabba. Yes, it ends up with her enslaved and wearing a metal bikini, but she's still pretty competent at what she does. She almost gets him out of there. And even when she is enslaved and wearing a metal bikini, she uses the chains of her enslavement to kill the guy that enslaved her. How is that not empowering? So, she's competent. But after that, things start to really fall apart. She makes some weird choices. She's put in these uncharacteristic roles of weird and/or natural stuff. I don't know. But it's like they're trying to pull her away from that snarky, critical woman who did not take shit from anybody, even two of the most powerful and dangerous men in the galaxy, and who, I will add, did not break in front of them. Yeah, she was demonstrably upset, but she did not break, even when her entire planet was destroyed in front of her eyes. She did not break. She did not tell them the truth of where the rebellion was headquartered, even when they destroyed her entire world. She did not break. It doesn't get more badass than that. So, that woman, the one who doesn't hesitate to bitch at the ineptitude of her rescuers, would have wanted to be called Doctor, just as she later chooses to be called General. So this year, for Halloween, I'm dressing up as Leia. I'll be wearing the iconic white gown and head buns, but I'm going to tell everyone that I am Dr. Organa. Because although I'm sure Leia would want to honor the achievements of her adopted family, the Organas, and their legacy, the evidence suggests that she would be prouder of what she has done on her own. Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill? What are your thoughts on Leia, just in general? As a character, as an icon, as anything? Let me know by email, feministromantic@gmail.com, or you can comment on my webpage, thefeministromantic.com. There will be a blog there for this episode. Just leave me a comment there and I'll get back to you. And I apologize again for the quality of my voice and breaking and coughing and having to take a break for tea there for a moment. And hopefully in the next 2 weeks my voice will return entirely and I can come back with a longer episode about romance series. Still, if you have any series in mind, I can add them to my notes for what I was going to talk about this week. Specifically, I'm still looking for more series that follow a single couple over the course of several books, because I've read a couple, but I would love to have some more data points for my podcast. So if you know of some that you love, please get in touch with me and let me know. Again, thefeministromantic@gmail.com. And thank you for listening, and I will be back again in 2 weeks. Goodbye.